We see two obstacles now. First, Hungary. Peter Magyar is expressing fresh reservations about accession and is slowing things down. And then with Poland, you are currently embroiled in a very bitter dispute with Poland over your decision to rename one of your military units. The Polish defense minister even said that your decision could lead to the blockage of accession process. So how do you intend to convince Peter Magyar to leave his reservations?
And we have some internal questions. What you asked about the Poland and Polish government, we are neighbors, and I'm sure, of course, we had difficulties in our history.
Yes, I have a question on accession. President Zelensky, today you repeated your ambition to open the 5 remaining clusters as soon as possible, but we see two obstacles now. First, Hungary. Peter Magyar is expressing fresh reservations about accession and is slowing things down. And then with Poland, you are currently embroiled in a very bitter dispute with Poland over your decision to rename one of your military units. The Polish defense minister even said that your decision could lead to the blockage of accession process. So how do you intend to convince Peter Magyar to leave his reservations? How do you intend to bring down tensions with Poland before it spirals out of control? And for the Taoiseach, what do you make of the fact that bilateral disputes could derail a policy that is one of your top priorities for the presidency? Thank you both.
Thanks so much for your question. So first of all, we count on all the countries on unanimity of EU to open all the clusters from our side. We did everything what the Council, what all the leaders asked us to do. Even with some difficulties with Orban government, we did everything. So I hope that Peter Magyar will support, and I hope that also Poland government will support. I think it's important when we all have rules, not, I mean, it's just, political emotions, and they said we have rules in EU. We have to do what we have to do. So and that's why, be honest, yes, we did everything what was in agenda for opening clusters. The second point, look, it was not simple for us to do all these issues during the war, and I think this is also an important moment that we are saving and defending not only Ukraine, of course, first of all, Ukraine, yes, but also other countries of Europe, and I think it's important, it's in interest of all the countries to have Ukraine in EU as quick as possible. So this is what I think, and we have some internal questions. What you asked about the Poland and Polish government, we are neighbors, and I'm sure, of course, we had difficulties in our history. But all the, mostly countries in Europe had difficulties in the past. But we live now. Now we have one aggressor, and now we have unanimity, and we are defending EU, and we have to think about security for our people for the future. And that's why I think that questions always will find answers if we are ready to be strong neighbors and if we are ready to find answers. So Ukraine is ready. Ukraine, I think, is a strong partner and a good friend for our neighbors. I hope that our neighbors will support. By the way, we had the Conference of Reconstruction in Gdańsk, in Poland, the native city of President, both, and Prime Minister of Poland. So we had the conversation on the level of Prime Ministers. They opened this conference. Thousands of people been there. Business, and it's also in the interest of Polish business, I know, to come with other partners, with other businesses, including Irish business to come after this war will end for reconstruction is good. It's win-win. So I hope that we have more things in the future than in the past.
Could I say that, first of all, accession to EU membership is something the Ukrainian people deserve and need, and it's something they've been aspiring to in the context of defending their homeland and their sovereignty. They want a European way of life, European way of life, with all the freedoms that go with that. And we have to keep that as the central objective, and Russia cannot win the war. And therefore unity is important between all the EU member states on that central question. It is not the first time that bilateral issues have been problematic for accession. We've had it at different times in the Western Balkans, for example. And our view and our task is to make sure that we overcome those challenges. Our own history with the Good Friday Agreement was all about reaching parity of esteem between different traditions, different cultural language and so on, and understanding that people come from different perspectives to an issue. It's about respect, and it's about mutual respect of where people are coming from. And thirdly, I do believe, given what has happened in Hungary after the election and so on, it's been a breath of fresh air in terms of the approach to Europe. And we hope that follows through in terms of the opening of the clusters for Ukraine and Moldova, and indeed others as well, in terms of in the Western Balkan context, that others can come along, so that we have a broader movement and momentum behind the accession question, and we will work constructively with all concerned to bring that about.
Polish President Karol Nawrocki has revoked the Order of the White Eagle that had previously been awarded to Volodymyr Zelensky, marking a significant development in relations between the two countries. The move followed Kiev's decision to honor a military unit that uses traditions associated with the UPA. The issue has reignited long-standing historical tensions between Poland and Ukraine. Zelensky granted the title Heroes of the UPA to a special operations unit in late May. The recognition drew criticism from several political figures in Poland. The UPA was the armed wing of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists during World War II. The group remains a highly controversial part of the region's history. Poland holds the UPA responsible for mass killings of Poles, Jews, and other minorities during the war. These events continue to shape historical debates between the two nations. Nawrocki said that historical truth cannot become a bargaining chip in political relations. He stressed that certain historical issues should not be compromised for diplomatic reasons. The Polish president also said that preserving the memory of the victims remains a moral duty of the Polish state. He described remembrance as a responsibility owed to future generations. Nawrocki stated that at least 100,000 Polish citizens were killed by the UPA. He cited this figure while explaining his opposition to honoring the group. He further described Ukraine's glorification of the organization as insulting and deeply disappointing. According to Nawrocki, such actions undermine efforts to build mutual understanding.
Pozostaje przede wszystkim formacją odpowiedzialną za
The Ukrainian Insurgent Army, UPA, remains above all formation responsible for the cruel crimes committed against citizens of the Republic of Poland during World War II. The position of the Polish state on this matter has been known for years. In 2016, the Sejm of the Republic of Poland recognized a crime committed by the OUN and UPA as genocide. By virtue of this act, July 11th was established as a national day of remembrance for the victims of genocide committed by Ukrainian nationalists in 2025. This was also confirmed by the power of a special law. Facts are not subject to negotiation. They do not change with the political climate or need. Therefore, naming one of the Ukrainian military units after UPA criminals has a significance that goes far beyond Ukraine's domestic affairs. Poland has repeatedly signaled to the Ukrainian side the special importance of this issue. We conveyed our position and the expectation of a reconsideration of the consequences of this decision for relations between our states. Ultimately, the position of the Ukrainian side did not change. History should not be an obstacle to the future. A good future can, however, only be built on truth. Poland has repeatedly shown that it is capable of shaping the future beyond the burden of the past, but never at the expense of memory. Over recent years, we have consistently built relations with Ukraine based on partnership and dialogue. After I took office as president, together with the president of Ukraine, we made an effort to rebuild trust in areas that remained a source of tension. The return of the Church of St. Nicholas in Kiev, consents for the search and exhumation of Polish victims in Ostroki, Wola Ostrowiecka, Huta Pieniaka, Holosko, from the fields in Igli, or Kuznets were a signal that, despite a difficult history, agreement is possible. All these actions provided a basis for believing that Poland and Ukraine are gradually finding a path to lasting reconciliation. That is why the decision of the Ukrainian authorities to glorify the UPA is not only outrageous, it is also incomprehensible and deeply disappointing. It strikes not only at historical memory, it also strikes at the trust built over the years and over recent months. It strikes at the foundation of reconciliation. It strikes at the conviction that truth can be the common language of our nations. We did what we could to save our neighbors. At this terrible moment, Poland provided unprecedented humanitarian, political, economic, and military assistance. We urge other nations to provide rapid assistance. Today, over 1.5 million Ukrainians live in Poland. The scale of the financial assistance we have provided to fighting Ukraine amounts to billions of zlotys. As a commander-in-chief of the armed forces, I must also recall that the Polish military has trained thousands of Ukrainian soldiers. Today, we cannot remain indifferent to the fact that some of them will now serve under the banner of the UPA. This is unacceptable to us. I do not recall these numbers and data to demand gratitude, but I recall them so that everyone understands why the decision of the President of Ukraine arouses such immense opposition in us. Therefore, in light of President Volodymyr Zelensky's consent to name one of the units of the armed forces of Ukraine after UPA heroes, after consultation with the chapter, I have decided to strip the President of Ukraine of the Order of the White Eagle. At this point, I want to emphasize that this decision is not against a Ukrainian nation. It does not signify a change in the strategic direction of Polish security policy. We have supported and continue to support Ukraine because we know that Russian aggression poses a threat to the security of Poland and the whole of Europe. Nothing has changed in this assessment. Poland remains ready to cooperate with Ukraine. Poland remains supporter of dialogue. But Poland will consistently guard the memory of its citizens and the dignity of its own state symbols. Poland will defend its national interests and values. Poland will not agree to the glorification of those who murdered defenseless Polish civilians. Ukraine's path to European structures also requires a readiness to honestly face the difficult pages of its own history. A united Europe was built on the rejection of totalitarianism and the cult of violence. These principles must apply to everyone. For those who do not understand this, there can be no place in the European Union, and Poland will certainly not allow that. Ukraine should also remember that nothing serves the Kremlin's interest more than a conflict between Poles and Ukrainians. There are limits that must not be crossed in Polish-Ukrainian relations. It is also an appeal to our neighbors. Return to the path of truth and mutual respect. Ladies and gentlemen, this is also a lesson for us. We cannot remain indifferent to the affirmation of symbols of crime.